Can you explain gaslighting?
Yeah, so actually recently I started to understand like the concept of gaslighting, but it's mainly I wouldn't even say it's like twisting your words, but it's almost trying to change the narrative of the story to make it seem like whatever you're saying is either untrue or is not based in anything. It's just kind of it's not like, oh, they make it seem like you're crazy, but almost like putting down the importance of what you're
Mm.
saying.
I'm not perfect, and I don't have all the answers. I don't know anyone who is. In fact, there's always someone who knows more than you about a specific topic. This is a space where conversations and discussions can be had that will help build an understanding of folks from all walks of life. Finally, I hope you, the listener, becomes more knowledgeable about a topic or subject than you did before, whether it be business, social and political issues, or any other topics that may come up. This is More to Know, and I'm Chris Moore. Zoe, great to have you. Welcome to the first podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris. How are you?
Chris. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Obviously, it's great to have you on, but I want everybody to know about your expertise.
Yeah, so me and Chris actually go way back. We met my freshman year and we were in a club together and our friendship just kind of like bloomed from there. But in undergrad, I got my bachelor's in like health promotion. And then recently I went to Emory University to get my master's in public health, where I specialized in infectious disease and my department was global health. But I've always kind of had a passion for like social justice and like mental health. Like a lot of my family members are in like the psychology field. So like I feel like I'm a psychologist by association.
Nice, nice. How has Corona just or COVID-19 totally just like affected your major? Like, if you were a student now, do you think like
Mhm.
your coursework would have been different, or I guess it would have been like real world experience, like hands on?
Yeah, no, so in the beginning when it kind of started, like before it was even labeled a pandemic, like it was cute because, we were seeing what we learned in class like actually happen. And then it was just like we were learning about public health surveillance and epidemiology. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And like I was looking at the checklist for like the WHO and I was like, it's a pandemic. Like say it's a pandemic
Right.
already. So like that was nice. But then it's just like, oh, like getting real. Like we're
Yeah.
seeing just like the caseload just growing and growing and like looking how different public health systems across the world were handling the cases. It was just like kind of spread a highlight on just like the disproportionate way Americans are affected, especially people of color and more
Mm.
specifically Black people, even in the health community and health
Wow.
workers.
Damn. Actually, when you say especially Black people, that leads me to my next topic. In the past few months, the importance of Black lives in America has been illuminated. Sadly, it took the murders of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and countless others under that same umbrella, and even more specifically, and also with the same amount of importance, the movement kind of a Protect Black Women movement has started. Me as a Black man, let me know in your words, how can we protect you? How can we protect Black women?
I think the number one thing is to let your actions match your words. Because especially on social media, I see a lot like protect Black women, all this, like stand up for our queens. However, in that same sense, like you'll see Black men like putting women down or just like making jokes, making memes and whatnot. So it's and oftentimes like us Black women we kind of just get disregarded and just like ignored. So allowing our voices to be heard is another big thing. But I think the number one thing is like preach what you speak. Like I can allude to the whole situation that like went down with like Meg the Stallion and like Tory Lanez and her shooting. Like when Meg said her story, a lot of people, including Black men, they were like, oh, like let's wait until we see Tory's side of the story. They're making memes about her,
Mm,
kind of just making light of the situation and things like that. And they weren't taking her seriously. Yet, in the same sense, they were out here preaching, oh, Breonna Taylor needs justice to protect our Black women. And it's like, okay, here's a Black woman that needs protecting. And what do? You make fun of her, you make light of the situation. You're like, oh, let's wait till we hear both sides. No, we didn't do it. You're basically trying to gaslight the Black woman.
mm.
And that's very
And
disheartening for us.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut. I hope I didn't cut you
No,
off.
no, you're fine. You're fine.
Can you explain gaslighting in your own words? I think that word kind of gets when people hear it, they automatically sometimes may be like, "Oh no, I'm not gaslighting," and I'm that is
In
gaslighting. So
itself
can
is yeah.
can you give your definition of gaslighting, please?
Yeah, so actually recently I started to understand like the concept of gaslighting, but it's mainly I wouldn't even say it's like twisting your words, but it's almost trying to change the narrative of the story to make it seem like whatever you're saying is either untrue or is not based in anything. It's just kind of it's not like, oh, they make it seem like you're crazy, but almost like putting down the importance of what you're
Mm,
saying. And just kind of like trying to change the narrative, as I said.
like kind of make it your own narrative, trying to make
Yeah.
the kind. Okay, okay, that makes
Hmm.
sense. When we talk about protecting Black women, I think a lot of people also may hear that term and they get like, "Oh no, I protect, I would never hit a woman," And I like the
Hmm.
fact that you brought up that it's more than just the physical. It
Hmm.
goes into the conversations and it goes into what's being posted on social media and even how your points of view on specific topics. So say there was somebody younger and you were trying to train them up. I want to make sure my younger brother or
Hmm.
my child is raised in a world where they're protecting Black women. What's something you
Yeah.
would say to them?
This doesn't kind of relate to like the examples that you gave, but I think my number one point, like in the future, if I'm raising sons, is like listen to them, like actually listen to what they say, process and try to understand. Because I feel like a lot of times, like we're heard, but we're not listened to,
Mm.
and it's just kind
Can
of
you repeat that? I
so
want to make sure. I want to make sure that's
yeah,
highlighted.
yeah. So what I was saying is, listen to us. A lot of times we're just kind of heard, but we're not actually listened to. So I feel a lot of times people are just hearing in order to make a point or to argue instead of actually listening to the other person's point of view and trying to understand where they're coming from. And then I think that's the best way that you can adapt yourself in order to protect them. See what they're coming from, see what they need to be protected from, and then adapt yourself to that.
So I think that's something that I have learned throughout this whole time. It's just like I used to, and this isn't just when it would pertain to women speaking. Even when I would be trying to get a point across, I would like I guess like listen through one ear but be ready to respond with the other,
Mhm.
just like okay, okay. So it really has made me sit back and like realize I never thought I had all the answers, but like I would think like I knew more on something than I did, and it's like, well, no, this person has not the degrees or everything, but this person has an expertise in this. This person knows what they're
Yeah.
talking about. They're getting there a different way, but it's not through your it's not through your means. There's a quicker way to get to something or to,
Mhm.
to find something out. And I think that's been a really huge revelation that I've had personally lately in the last few months.
Yeah. And I think also another thing is just like allowing yourself to be open to new ideas. I think that's one thing like during grad school is what really opened my ideas because like in undergrad and especially high school, I was like, oh, like I know a lot of stuff. And then you like go into grad school and you meet all these people from like so many different backgrounds and it's just like, okay, you kind of almost have to humble yourself and just like be open to learning. Because I
Right.
think that's the biggest thing. Like we're kind of set in our own worldview and our own perspective. Even if you don't agree with the worldview or perspective somebody's giving to you, just be open to listening and listen to understand, not listen to respond.
I think you and I
Yeah.
had a good conversation maybe a few weeks ago about
Mhm.
just like, how someone can be a great ally. And I think the word ally, I think, is overused, but
Mhm.
how you can just be a great how you can be a great partner, and I don't even know if that's the right word, but what are your thoughts on how someone an allyship?
I agree with you that like allyship is sometimes being overused, and I think the biggest issue I have with allyship is performative allyship. So what performative allyship is just kind of just posting a lot of things and just be like, yeah, stand up, do this, and then that's the end of it. You don't change your lifestyle based on it. You're not trying to get more educated on the subject. It's just kind of like a viral post, and you just post it, and that's done. And I think the biggest example of performative allyship was during Blackout Tuesday. And for those who don't know, Blackout Tuesday, I can't remember the exact date, but it was where you post a black square or you on social media. But what a lot of people didn't know was that you're supposed to only buy from black-owned businesses that day.
Mm,
And a lot of celebrities, a lot of everyone, they just posted their Black square, and that was it. Not a lot of people actually followed through. And like I did that. Luckily, I was in Atlanta where there's a lot more like Black owned businesses. So like I went to eat at a Black owned restaurant and things like that. But like making that effort to support the Black community and not just be like, yeah, I'm here for you, and then you're just quiet and you don't actually
mm,
do anything. So I think it all ties back to let your actions speak.
mm. That's profound. Yeah, I mean, I think I think actions are definitely the number one way you can be, an ally. But
Mm-hmm.
and I think I do kind of feel that we are, things are performative even on the flip side because as a black person, if you saw someone's Instagram and they didn't have a black square, I know
Mm-hmm.
some people who were like, and you don't know
Right.
what they could have donated, they could have been at a food, they just might not post a lot.
Right.
So I do think
So
that
yeah, I completely agree because I think oh sorry, you froze.
no, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I completely agree with your point because I feel like we can't just put the blame on everybody else because
Mhm.
we're guilty. Sometimes like people would almost come and attack other people for like not posting or not being loud. But the thing I'll say about like allyship and to answer your question, like how can you be an ally? You don't have to be, there's multiple ways to be part of the movement. Not everyone wants to go out to a protest. Not everyone has money to donate. So some people can donate, some people can just share information. I think the biggest thing behind allyship is the intention behind it. So if you're trying to like just, be out there, be seen that you're an ally and not really trying to empower, I don't even like the word empower, but support the Black community, then I don't think that's allyship. I think it's just like talking the talk.
Mhm.
And I think it's very important, even with companies. I think it was a couple months ago. Jackie Aina had this challenge for like beauty brands to either pull up or shut up because
Mhm.
that was during the George Floyd situation, his murder. A lot of companies were posting like, "Oh, like Black Lives Matter, da 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 da," and she was
Mhm.
like, "Show us like the amount of Black people in like your executive board and
Mhm.
things like that, and like release your numbers." And a lot of companies actually did. Gratefully, they released their numbers, and I'm
Wow.
like, "We see it, and like we're going to do better to change the
Wow.
proportion." Mm-hmm.
No, and that's important too, representation. I mean, you can post all the black squares you want. You can,
Mm-hmm.
have a limited edition black, phone. I don't know, I'm making up stuff.
Right, or like
But
T-shirt.
right. And it can sell out. But if you have nobody black on the board, this is just a moment. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
movement for you. And it shows in even the hires you make, the people it matters. I think, and I'll speak for myself. I don't know if the same is for you, but when I go into a place, a business, I kind of look for, all the people of color that work there. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a board or board of directors or executives, like I don't see much, you know, melanin at all. And when I say melanin, I mean black people, but I also mean people of color. You have,
Yeah.
you know, I think that there should be someone if you have an international company, I think that there should be somebody that represents every phase of the area.
Yeah, and somebody who's also like knowledgeable on the
Right.
country
Right.
and things like that because oof, the white savior complex. That's a meaning for another day.
Mm.
Speak
I will
to
have you
that.
back on for that one.
But yeah, I agree with what you said. I know, like every time I walk in a room, even if it's not a business, in my mind, I always say, "Where the ethnics at?"
All right.
Because
Mm.
like I
It's a
like to
good question.
have, yeah, because I like diversity, and even if it's not my own culture or things like that, like I like to see a blend of colors. So in undergrad, like there was a majority, it was very like PWI.
Hmm.
So like didn't really see that much of diversity, and then those who were of like the same descent, like we stuck together, and
Right.
like I love that. I love having that community, but it's like that's one thing I really enjoyed when I moved to Atlanta, and like soon I'll be moving to New York. Is just kind of having like that blended pot where you can just be, I know, Friday, but you can just see just all the different cultures and things like that. Because I think that also goes to like listening and like learning and just
Mm,
experience other cultures. Because I think there's a lot of issues going on with like America right now. Everyone's set in their own mindset. They don't think about others. Like we're a very individualistic country, and I think the issue is like a lot of like Black people or those like international, they kind of adapt a collective
mm,
mindset. So I
mm.
guess like a common thing is like if I eat, we all eat.
Right. Okay.
So, mhm,
I like what you said because that kind of brings you back full circle to what you were saying about, the benefits of going to a place where you can see people of different cultures. You learn so much more when you're in an environment where there's people that have different that people that are different. You learn so much more, and I
mhm,
think you become more creative if you're in a creative field. You become, you find out how people do things, and it's like, wow, this is way more efficient than the way I was doing it.
mhm,
Thank you. Instead of being
right,
afraid of it, embrace it. That's how I
yeah,
feel.
mhm, yeah, and even to that point, even if it's something you're not really used to or you're not really like willing to try or things like that, I think it's like trying to look at the positive of it. I was like, okay, like I don't want to follow this per se, but like there might be a couple of pieces of like good information that I can apply to my own life and
Right.
things like that. Like, okay, I like the way you did that. Let me apply it to my own situation.
You can't go wrong with learning something new that's going to help and benefit you.
Hmm. My mom always said, "The day you stop learning is the day you die."
Mm, that needs to be on a shirt.
Right.
That needs and
I'm gonna
just put
start
mom
my
on the bottom. Zoe's
right.
mom. Oh,
So
shout out to your mom. Wow.
shout out to my parents. My
Yes.
dad told me, because he has his doctorate as well. So my dad was like, "Yeah, if you don't go to med school, the least you can do is get a PhD." And I was like, you
The
know,
least you could do. Oh my God.
Nigerian parents and their love to say their child is a whole doctor.
That's amazing. I mean, you got excellence around you. Not everybody can say that. That's a
It's
blessing.
pressure. It is a
It is.
blessing, but it comes with cons. But I've adapted.
How do you feel about this too? When people are always, they say, oh, the strong, black woman, trope that people say. I mean, obviously,
Hmm.
black women are strong. I'm not saying they're not. But how do you feel when you constantly hear that?
I I'm not really a fan of it. I actually like, rolled my eyes when you said strong black women because I feel like that's just kind of like a stereotype that's been like labeled on us. Like they expect us to just do everything and survive on our own. And I think that
Mm,
kind of goes back to protecting black women. Like I feel like black men, they don't feel like they really need to protect them in actuality because like they're strong, they can protect themselves. I'm like, no, we're human beings. Like we go through it. Like yeah, we can put up a front, but like don't expect us to like save myself and save the world.
right.
And like sometimes I see like politicians that are like, oh, like black women will save America. I actually tweeted something about this. I'm like, we consistently get disrespected to the utmost degree, and yet they have the audacity to expect us to save them.
Mm,
And it's like, if you want me to help you, help me. Like, we go through our own stuff, like emotionally, physically, like, especially like in healthcare and like child and mother like mortality rate is especially affecting the black community and black women.
mm.
And it's just like the discrepancies just go on and on and on. Like I can talk forever, like the proportions and how black people are treated, especially black women.
Why do you think that is? Because I've seen the reports. I've seen, I know people personally that have experienced that, and it's heartbreaking. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that black women are disproportionately affected?
Oh, in the medical field, like yes,
Oh, in the
yes, like
medical field?
yes.
Yeah. I mean, like it goes back to like the things with like systematic racism, but I think it's also I've seen reports where like in medical school they're actually like, taught to not believe the black women as much as the black
Wow.
or white women. They're really like, okay, like they're going to emphasize or exaggerate their level of pain and things like that. So just the way they're treated like by white doctors, especially like OBGYNs. It's just like,
Mm,
okay, they're not really believing or they're not emphasizing and they're kind of just looking to the side. Like, I don't know, it's not that deep. And I think that's why there's such a push to be like, you have to advocate for yourself. And
Mm.
that's why I think we get the narrative of strong Black women. Like, we shouldn't have to advocate for ourselves. Like, we should be advocated for. And I think that's also going back to the whole topic in general, so how men can protect us is advocate for us in
Mm.
any field.
Can you give a real world example of how someone can advocate for you? Because I understand what you mean by that, but I want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure I want to give our audience an example.
Yeah. Let's see. I think we can almost like go back to like the pay gap and things like that. So this didn't really have to do with like a Black woman, it was just like a white woman. However, a report came out that on Chadwick Boseman, may he rest in peace, his movie 21 Bridges, he used his salary to make sure it was equal pays with his white counter or his woman counterpart.
Oh, Sienna Miller.
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's just like when you see something unfair or like you know that okay, if this person's getting more attention, but like this Black woman, she's not, she's getting ignored, like step up to the place. If you see that, like you can just be standing in line, like advocate, be like, no, like let's
Right.
get this figured out.
Right.
Because unfortunately in this thing we live in a patriotic society, so like a man's voice, a man's word is going to be taken more seriously than a woman, especially a Black woman. So
That was a great example. Like you said, pay. I mean, you may not always know what everyone's making, but if you're, privy to anything like that and you realize it's not the same and you're doing the same work, say something.
And even like before you get in the office job, like when it comes to like applications and like qualifications, sometimes one is way more qualified. Say they're hiring for multiple positions, so they hire the man who's less qualified, but they'll pay him more, whereas the woman who's more qualified will get paid less. So I think that goes back to like they're doing more of the work, or like they're more qualified, they have expertise in this thing, yet because they're a woman, they just get disregarded, and like give credit where credit is due. Because like even in places like I've been fortunate to like do something well, but I know I put as much effort as somebody else. If I get the praise, I'm like, no, like everyone did well, even if they're like, oh, like speak on like what you did to like get to this point, like share the credit, like give credit is due, because I feel like especially as Black people, we and Black women, we get disregarded so much that that's just a simple way to like uplift us. It's like, okay, you saw the work that we did and now we're getting credit, so it almost puts us on a platform of just equality, which unfortunately we really don't have.
Zoe, can you explain the difference between equality and equity? Because I think that gets lost to a lot of people.
So the only way I know how to explain it is using this kind of like graphic that I saw once on the internet. I don't know who did it, but credit to them. It was a fence, and there was three people at three different heights. One could look over the fence. There was kind of a middle person who couldn't really see, but they were right there, and like a short person couldn't see anything. So it said equality is everyone gets the same amount of support, so they get like everyone got like a box to stand on, and like middle person could see, the tall person could see even higher, and the short person still couldn't see. Whereas equity is making sure everyone's at the same platform and giving support to those who are lesser. So the tall person, he didn't get anything because he could already see. The middle person, he got one box so that he could see at the same level as the tall person, and the really short one, he got two boxes so that they were all at the same eye level.
Equity achieves what I think everyone thinks equality does.
Exactly, yes.
Thank you for that breakdown. I like that. I'm going to start using that more. Equity.
Yeah, like when you say racial equality, I'm like racial equity, because we're not the same starting point. Yeah, we're not the same starting point. I think that's the biggest thing between equality and equity. We're not the same starting point, so we have to get to the same finishing point.
Another profound point. So Zoe, I'm going to end it on a slightly light note. I know you have a very busy schedule where you're in the office putting in work. Thank you again for taking this time. I'm going to ask you three just rapid fire questions if you have the time. Is that cool?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. What's something you're watching on Netflix these days, or Hulu, or Disney Plus?
So I switched to Hulu because I bought the bougie one where it's ad
Uh,
free. So I was like, yes. I've been watching The Real Housewives of Potomac, and I've also been watching Dancing with the Stars. And I have like my list of animes, but we can get into that later. But yeah, those are the main ones.
all right, second question. What sports, if any, have you been watching lately?
Um, so I recently got into volleyball because I started watching this anime called Haikyuu. If anyone's new into the anime, I would suggest that. And it's just like, wow, like volleyball is intense. So I haven't watched anything live. Like, of course, I like keep up with like soccer and things like that, but I haven't really watched a lot of live games. Growing up like an athlete in high school, like if I wasn't watching it in person, I don't want to watch it.
True.
But I'm sure like with the like NBA like finals coming up, I'll like pay attention somewhat.
Nice. Okay. Okay. Final question. So, if you were in the WNBA, what
Mm-hmm.
message, if any, would you have on the back of your jersey?
Well, that's a good question. Pay me more.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that. I like that. Just get straight to the pay me more.
Right.
Equity.
Right.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Zoe, thank you so much for taking the time. Appreciate you. Hope to have you on more episodes.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of More to Know. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes.